Elizabeth had been running the kingdom of Haldoria for years, with her heart and with the time she was theoretically supposed to split with her own fiancé. But as a reward for all that dedication, she got backstabbed, not just by the crown prince, but by an entire kingdom that decided to turn its back on her. So obviously she made a not-so-gentle decision. She was going to get payback on every single one of those rats. Elizabeth Leiston is the daughter of Duke Sieg Leiston, Chancellor of Haldoria. Since she was little, basically since she could walk and talk, she already knew she'd end up as the bride of Frida Haldoria, the crown prince. And as if being drop-dead gorgeous wasn't enough, she's also a certified workaholic. Ever since she showed up at the palace as the future queen, she somehow ended up running basically the entire kingdom's administration solo. Mireille, Elizabeth's lady-in-waiting, is constantly worried sick watching her work herself to the bone until all hours, including covering for the prince's responsibilities while he's out there living his best party boy life. Mireille even says it's flat-out cowardly to dump the whole kingdom on his own fiancé's shoulders, but Elizabeth shuts her down immediately. She doesn't let anyone talk trash about her fiancé, even when it's true. Truth is, the prince is just dead weight. She doesn't need that man-child to get anything done. And the kicker? She's not even doing this for Frida. She's doing it for the people of Haldoria, period. The next day, there she was, handling everything all over again. But she never stopped feeling fulfilled by helping her people. People who, by the way, are deeply grateful to her. And why wouldn't they be? Elizabeth has zero personal agenda, has never been dishonest with anyone. Who wouldn't love having someone like that in charge? She even founded the funnel company and pours every cent of profit into helping the poor and funding charity projects. Suddenly, she overhears a group of elderly folks whispering about her. They're saying that if there's anyone in the palace who's actually on the people's side, it's her. That without Elizabeth, inequality would be so much worse. She hides her face, a little flustered, when she hears an old man say he'd love to meet her in person just to say thank you. People don't even really know her face, but it's not embarrassment making her hide. It's pure shyness, because she wants to do so much more for the kingdom, all for those people's happiness. It was already night when her fiancé showed up to talk. Subject, the Giaco Company. Frida wanted to greenlight their entry into the palace, but Elizabeth's not even considering it. That company exploits small merchants way past the line. They don't have an ounce of dignity to deserve that kind of green light, and the kingdom's actually planning to hit them with a formal warning. But of course, the prince is only worried about his own reputation. Typical. Elizabeth couldn't care less. She's doing what's right, end of story. Maybe she'll reconsider if the company cleans up its act. Frida stormed off, pissed. Deep down, all he ever wanted was a submissive bride who'd just shut up and obey. But Elizabeth doesn't bow her head to anyone. She just told him to be more responsible so he doesn't tarnish the royal family's name. The prince stomped off, irritated. And by Elizabeth's orders, Robert keeps an eye on him, making sure no threat gets anywhere near His Highness. That's when Robert decided to stick his nose in. Said the prince was probably just tired from work, that Elizabeth could stand to be a little gentler with her words. She snapped back, cold as ice. Any little nobody can bring a whole country crashing down. Robert was outraged she'd call the prince a nobody, but she just reminded him of something painfully obvious. If the country falls, it's the people who suffer. Always. A little while later, Elizabeth's day off finally arrived. A whole free day. This is so rare there's no telling when it'll happen again. It was going to be great. She was going to soak up every single minute of it to rest. Except her dad showed up with news. An international summit was happening soon. First thing next week, and Prince Frida would be leaving the next day, along with Sieg. Elizabeth was crushed, because that exact same week was the kingdom's founding anniversary party, and neither one could be cancelled. The summit was about monster sightings, way too urgent to push back, and the party already had guests coming in from far-off countries. Her dad just dumped the entire responsibility on her and walked away. Real solid parenting, huh? And the mastermind behind this whole mess was Frida himself, who decided leaving everything in Elizabeth's hands was the right call. End result? Her day off, canceled. And then, looking out the window, she saw it, bold as brass, Frida with his side chick, Sylvia, daughter of a baron. The girl had only just arrived at the palace, but she'd already completely charmed the prince. The two of them, all cozy in the garden like an actual couple. That is the absolute peak of shameless. If they wanted to be together so bad, then Sylvia needed to learn how to behave. And guess who's gonna be stuck educating her own fiancé's mistress? Yep, Elizabeth. But it doesn't even faze her. After all, it's only natural for Frida to want a second wife, right? So she went to talk to Sylvia. Told her that one wrong move could tank the prince's image, and the whole kingdom's along with it. Sylvia turned on the fake innocent act, pretending to be all shy while hanging on every word. And that bruise on her ankle? Elizabeth nailed it dead on. Happened during a horseback ride, with a certain nobleman who definitely wasn't Frida. But she's not going to say a word to the prince. She just told Sylvia to stop getting cozy with any man who wasn't her fiancé. Sylvia got the message loud and clear and swore she'd follow it to the letter. Elizabeth walked off, irritated. That's when Frida showed up, right on cue to spend some quality time with Sylvia, and noticed tears welling up in her eyes. And the little schemer made him believe Elizabeth was the one who'd hurt her. Played the victim, played the saint, said it was all Elizabeth's fault. Frida, of course, decided his fiancée needed to be punished, hard, for messing with his precious Sylvia. A few days later, in the middle of the kingdom's anniversary party, Frida humiliated Elizabeth in front of dozens of guests, screamed that she'd pushed Sylvia down a staircase, called off the engagement right there on the spot, and had her hauled straight to the dungeons. She didn't even lose her composure, just calmly denied everything, looking every single person in the eye. But nobody gave her a chance to defend herself. Robert himself arrested her, saying the one who ended up tarnishing His Highness's name was you. And to top it off, they claimed Sylvia had tried to protect her, taking the blame on herself. How typical. That's when it hit Elizabeth. She'd been betrayed by all of them. The whole thing was a setup from the start. Locked up, accused of trying to murder the prince's little darling. And as a bonus, Frida used the moment to publicly announce his new engagement to Miss Sylvia. The news reached both fathers. Only Frida's father thought his son's behavior was a total disgrace. He wanted to rush back to Haldoria and sort it out himself. But Sieg couldn't care less. Just said, she'll figure it out on her own, and turned his back on his own daughter once again. Both of them decided to leave the problem entirely to her, because if she couldn't handle it herself, well, that's proof she was never worthy of being any prince's bride anyway. A month went by, and Elizabeth kept working, even locked up. Seriously, it's astonishing how useless that prince actually is. That's when a presence appeared in the dungeons. She sensed it instantly, called the guard over, and with a simple snap of her fingers, hypnotized him and put him to sleep. It was Mireille. She came to tell her that her father and even the king himself had also turned their backs on her. Elizabeth was devastated. Everyone just wanted to dump their work on her and disappear. And there was more. The funnel company, the one Elizabeth herself founded, was being investigated on the prince's orders, who'd been spreading around that it was some kind of scam. Frida took control of the company and was definitely cooking up something shady. If they let him stay in charge, a lot of innocent people were going to suffer. Elizabeth felt obligated to fix it. That's when Mireille decided to lay the truth on her with all due respect. Mireille reminded her that it was Elizabeth herself who saved her, back when her family fell apart and the only choices left were becoming a slave or living on the streets. That's why Mireille felt such deep gratitude toward her, and exactly why it hurt so much to watch Elizabeth get treated like a disposable tool by the very same people she'd always helped. Mireille wasn't going to forgive that. No way. And she added, why keep killing herself for a kingdom like this? That's when Elizabeth stopped, and finally saw the full scope of the injustice. Still, she tried to defend the people. They have nothing to do with this. But Mireille wasn't letting that slide. She said it was the people themselves who'd been dragging her name through the mud, spreading rumors that she acted out of jealousy and tried to kill a baron's daughter, that she was trying to steal the throne from the prince. Lies planted by Frida himself, and of course, the people only believe him. They were even saying Elizabeth was some kind of monster incarnate about to destroy the kingdom. Mireille laid down the verdict. There's no forgiving people who watched Elizabeth give everything she had, only to abandon her over some cheap rumor. Not to mention her own father and the king had already turned their backs on her ages ago. And the worst part of all? An idiot of a prince who never once saw her worth, and a scheming mistress who set the whole thing up just to cheat on him later. That's when Elizabeth's eyes finally, truly opened. She threw a punch straight into the wall and thanked her. Right then and there, she decided to abandon that country for good and take Mireille with her. The two of them started organizing everything on the spot. Allies outside the country standing by for her orders, trusted people inside Haldoria secretly gathering intel. But before any of that, well, it'd only be polite to fix that wall first. Mireille wished the gods would bless Elizabeth's new path and vanished like smoke. Every living being in this world carries magic inside them, but only a dedicated few are able to actually manifest that magic into a real instrument. Whether that's a sword, a spear, whatever. That's called a sacred artifact. Elizabeth's artifact is the Grimoire of Beelzebub, one of the 7 grimoires. Its ability? Memorizing spells. Normally, nobody can use magic from an element they have 0 natural affinity for. But once you record someone else's magic inside the grimoire, that rule stops applying. That's why Elizabeth, whose only natural affinity is water, can manipulate stone without any problem. Same logic applies to the hypnosis spell, which came straight from the darkness element. 5 days later, Elizabeth was already free, out of the kingdom. But so nobody would suspect a thing, she left behind an ice clone of herself. To slip away unseen, Mireille used her mirage magic. As they walked through the dead of night, Elizabeth overheard someone talking about her again, calling her a treacherous fox who bled the people dry down to the last cent, saying she deserved to hang. That hit hard enough that she finally ripped the damn ring off her finger. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Empire's ambassador Lucas, who'd been right there in the crowd the day Elizabeth was arrested, sat alone in his palace thinking it over. He knew that with Frida in charge, Haldoria was headed straight for total chaos. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's conduct through all of it had been nothing short of flawless. Lucas knew full well that all of the kingdom's growth had happened because of her, including during the war between the Empire and Haldoria, when, thanks to a strategy she cooked up at just 10 years old, the Empire took a crushing defeat. And in the end, they tossed her aside like garbage. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the king of Haldoria appeared in Lucas's chambers, who nearly had a heart attack because he's terrified of that man. Except the king started speaking in a weirdly feminine voice and bowed like a girl. It was Elizabeth in disguise. Lucas was completely floored, and she had a request. She wanted asylum in the Empire, because it wasn't just the prince who'd committed something unforgivable. It was the entire kingdom. Elizabeth had lost every last shred of goodwill she still held for that country, and now there's only one thing on her mind: revenge. Tear Haldoria apart from the inside and take down one by one every single traitor in that miserable kingdom. Later, Lucas is walking Elizabeth and Mirae to the little corner where they'll be staying, and as they chat along the way, Elizabeth drops a bombshell. She has zero intention of taking on the kingdom head-on, none whatsoever. The Empire and the kingdom are already potential enemies, so she's going to milk that rivalry and use the Empire's power to her advantage. But hold up, that doesn't mean she's tossing the Empire aside afterward like some used toy. Quite the opposite. She's going to pay it back big time with every benefit she can squeeze out once she brings the kingdom down. In the end, everybody wins. First, Lucas wants Elizabeth to head over to his territory, right on the border with the kingdom. And for a while, she's going to be under watch, with zero chance of pulling a runner. Elizabeth then shows off her sacred artifact, the Grimoire of Wisdom. This grimoire logs every single book she's ever come into contact with, and every piece of information she's ever heard or seen. And since she's in exile now, she's going to spill everything to Lucas, including deep, dark secrets about the kingdom and its military power. Except, heads up, there's no magical grimoire actually called the Grimoire of Wisdom. Elizabeth's real sacred artifact is the 7 grimoires. She just had everyone convinced her power came from the Grimoire of Lucifer. And the kicker? Even the king and her own father fell for the con. Elizabeth promises Lucas she's going to make it worth his while, with a payoff so massive it'll make any bounty for turning her in look like pocket change. Afterward, Lucas and Elizabeth keep chatting over tea, easy breezy. She asks his permission to open up a business in the Empire. Because let's face it, you need cash for everything, right? Lucas doesn't see any problem with it, since Elizabeth used to run a trading operation back in the kingdom and has plenty of experience under her belt. Finally, she asks for a loan of 100 gold coins, which is a serious chunk of change. Except she's already thought this through and drew up a magical contract, spelling out that she'll pay back double the amount within a year. And if she can't pay up, she can be sold as a slave, with all her property rights and worth handed over to Lucas. He's floored by this wild promise, but she assures him within a year she's going to have so much gold that this table won't even be able to hold the weight. Then Elizabeth and Mirae head over to the spot that's going to become company headquarters. The place is an absolute wreck, total disaster zone. It only cost 1 gold coin, if you can believe that. Elizabeth tries to open the door, but she doesn't even need to, and it swings open on its own. That's how busted it is. Ignoring the whole precarious situation, Elizabeth announces that from now on, she'll go by the name Ellie Lice. All right then, cleaning time. A few days later, the place is completely transformed. It went from that rundown shack to a gorgeous space. The company's name is going to be Tretra Group. Mirae shows up with some exciting news. She managed to identify every noble with real pull in society. This time around, Elizabeth isn't going to sell cosmetics. That would require a solid team and better conditions. For now, they're going to sell soap. And not just any soap, this is top-tier quality, way better than anything sold in this kingdom. Of course, selling just soap means limited profit. The soap is just the starting point. Later, they'll invest in other products. Elizabeth heads to the chapel at the Church of Ibris. She shows up telling the priest she just founded a trading company and came to ask God for things to go well. Suddenly, some kids come running up, telling the priest they managed to make some good money today. He's happy for them, but asks them to save that topic for later since he's busy. In the building next door, the church helps kids who don't have families. The local feudal lord pitches in too. But even so, the priest admits their financial situation isn't great. And knowing that, the kids help cover expenses by pulling weeds around town and clearing brush at the guard barracks. The priest feels guilty about the kids' situation, even a little ashamed. Elizabeth comforts him with kind words, then pulls out a little pouch and takes out 5 gold coins to hand to him. The priest tries to politely refuse, but she fires back. Nothing matters more to a businesswoman than her customers, and just like that, she got exactly what she wanted. As evening falls, Mireille lets Elizabeth know she made contact with the planned people and that everything's set on the soap front. She handed out samples to the maids who work for the nobility. As planned, sales kick off tomorrow. Elizabeth tells Mireille to limit how much they sell and to be extremely picky about who they sell to. The price is going to be just a tiny bit higher than regular soap. Mireille asks why not charge way more since the soap's quality is so excellent. Elizabeth repeats, "This is just the starting point. The focus right now is stabilizing the Traitor Group brand and building relationships with influential people." Elizabeth wants everyone thinking, if it's soap, it's gotta be Traitor Group. And that's how the big revenge plot kicks off. 3 months later, Mireille hands Elizabeth the financial report for the past month. Ever since they started, sales just keep climbing. Now they're selling shampoo, lotion, and moisturizer too. A total success story. They've also got contacts from people who heard rumors and want to buy from Traitor Group. Those new clients need to be thoroughly vetted first. No slacking. Elizabeth grabs the money pouch and has Mireille donate it to the priest at the Church of Ibris and to other charities, same as always. Now, a little break is well deserved. Time to eat out. Elizabeth and Mireille go to a restaurant and keep talking about Traitor Group. They also bring up a rival company, Gazaru Company. Nothing alarming so far, but it's important to stay sharp, always keeping an eye out. Elizabeth whispers to Mireille, telling her to be careful with the soap formula so it doesn't leak out no matter what. This soap is what's going to determine their future. Mireille assures her the formula is locked away in the company vault under tight security. Except, without them noticing, a guy named Grants overhears the whole thing. The president of the rival company is seething with rage at Traitor Group because they're losing customers to them left and right. He's arguing hard with his butler, saying his old customers keep complaining about his soap and demanding Traitor Group's soap instead. And the problem is, the customers this group picked have serious clout in society, meaning if he picks a fight with Traitor Group, all those influential people are going to come down on him. Grants shows up and immediately gets humiliated by the president, who tells him to spit it out already. Grants reveals he's got information on Traitor Group. Before hearing what it is, the president tells the butler to leave the room. Grants then explains he heard, straight from the women of Traitor Group themselves, a rumor that the soap's secret formula is locked away in the company's vault. The president considers manufacturing the same soap, but since the group is already an established brand, it's better to spread a story that they got the soap through some shady back channel. That way, they can charge a much higher price than usual. He tosses Grants a little cash and tells him to forget about it and get out of his sight. And he just sits there, all smug, already picturing the end of the girls. After a while, back at Traitor Group headquarters, Mireille collects a report from the royal capital. It says that lying two-faced witch is now officially the crown prince's fiancée, another royal idiot. Mireille is still furious about the false accusations against Elizabeth, who's now being treated like a wanted criminal. Elizabeth knows immediately this is Duke Lyston's doing. Word has it he was at the front lines of the accusation against his own daughter. The Duke turned his own daughter into a traitor, because the only thing that matters to him is royalty and the royal family. Mireille and Elizabeth are both furious, but they're not going to let it shake them. The revenge has already begun, and when the time comes, Elizabeth is going to burn that kingdom to ashes and torch them, just like this simple piece of paper in her hand. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door. Mireille opens it, and people just barge right in, bold as ever. It's Arte Hilgardi, an investigator from the legal department that handles crimes within the Merchants Guild. The girls immediately get nervous. Arte announces, "Ellie Lace, president of Traitor Group, I'm placing you under custody." Elizabeth asks why, and Arte explains they received a report that the company is selling toxic soap. People have suffered serious skin damage and burns after using the product. So Elizabeth heads to headquarters to give her statement. After a thorough investigation, Arte states they found no toxicity or anything dangerous in Traitor Group's soap. Elizabeth points out there's no record of sales to any of the supposed victims, and not a single customer reported any harm. Arte agrees. It's extremely unlikely Traitor Group is involved in this at all. Elizabeth asks to examine the supposedly dangerous soap. Arte hands over the product, and she takes a good look. Elizabeth points out the finish is pretty sloppy. Sure, the color and appearance look a lot like the real soap, but she concludes someone copied the formula and produced a cheap knockoff. Elizabeth is absolutely certain about this. The formula for this soap is Traitor Group's most valuable asset, which is exactly why it was split into 2 parts. One stays in the company vault, and the other stays with Elizabeth at all times. Meaning, if you manufacture it with only one part of the recipe, the result turns toxic. It can't be sold without the neutralizing part, and only she has that. Elizabeth asks them to investigate where the victims bought the soap, and so it's done. It doesn't take long before the real culprit gets the complaint delivered fresh to his own desk. He's furious, totally lost on what's happening. The legal department shows up at his door to grill him about selling toxic soap, the illegal raid on Traitor Group, and the theft he committed. The president comes to have a chat with Elizabeth, seriously ticked off. She shows up introducing herself as Ellie Lace, president of Traitor Group, and regarding the case over the defamation of the company's name, she demands compensation for damages. The president admits he recognizes his own crimes, but he's not paying a single cent. After all, this guild has zero authority to force anyone to pay compensation. If they want him to pay up, they'd better call in an inquisitor from the Church of Ibris. The president, dripping with arrogance, figures everyone's just going to brush off some insignificant little girl like her. Elizabeth takes enormous pleasure in watching the president be dead wrong about that. Right behind her, the priest walks in. He tells the president to watch his mouth and calls him a sinner, saying Elizabeth is a sincere devotee of the faith and that God will never allow her honor to be unjustly tarnished. The priest orders the president to pay for his sins against her. Elizabeth jumps right in. Since the order comes from an inquisitor, it's entirely possible the president's assets could be seized by force. So, as compensation, Elizabeth is going to take full control of Gazaru Company, the staff, facilities, materials, and every other asset the company has. And Elizabeth declares, dripping with pride and sarcasm, that this loser's journey ends right here. Now that Elizabeth's picked that washed-up old geezer clean, her business is about to explode like never before. Arte apologizes for the whole mess and lets Elizabeth know they've got a suspect for who talked Gazaru into stealing the soap formula. The guy's name is Grants Carlton. He used to handle the accounting for the Gazaru Company. Problem is, there's zero proof against him, so Grants walks free on that front. Since the Gazaru Company got absorbed into Elizabeth's Traitor Group, this Grants guy is technically part of her company now. Elizabeth tells Arte she'll personally decide what happens to him. His fate is entirely in her hands. Mireille calls Grants in for a little chat in Elizabeth's office. He shows up, and Elizabeth cuts straight to it. No need to beat around the bush, since Grants already knows exactly what she wants to talk about. She walks up to him and hands him a bag stuffed with coins. That's the payout from the deal they struck. And that's not even the half of it. Elizabeth goes and hires Grants as one of the executives of the Traitor Group. All it takes is telling the guild he's shown remorse, and boom, the whole thing gets swept under the rug with zero punishment. Turns out Grants was one of the guys Elizabeth had Mireille reach out to from the jump. Deep down, she already knew Gazaru wasn't playing it straight. For someone to pull off a crime that blatant, there had to be somebody pulling strings behind the scenes. And the money's not even the main event. There's still a promise to keep. Grants heads home and finds his wife praying her heart out to God. Elizabeth's right there beside him. This surprise visit is about Grants' daughter, the one he fought tooth and nail to help. Her name's Lunoa. She got hit by a carriage and she's in rough shape. Grants scraped together every last coin he could to buy healing potions, but he was told Lunoa wasn't going to get any better. Elizabeth tells everyone to chill out. A healing spell is about to make Lunoa look like she was born again. She pulls out her magic grimoire, and when Grants asks what that is, Elizabeth just says it's a special item that boosts magic. Total lie, obviously. The existence of a sacred artifact is an absolute secret. The healing grimoire, Beelzebub's, has the power to record spells inside itself, and among them are insanely powerful healing spells logged by the kingdom's own archbishop. That's what lets Elizabeth pull off massive healing without breaking a sweat. Barely any effort at all. And Lunoa's eyes pop right open. Grants doesn't even know how to say thank you. Elizabeth says she just held up her end of the deal, but everyone needs to keep this whole thing under wraps. And with that, the entire Gazaru situation is closed for good. Elizabeth just landed herself a solid company, complete with an already established trade network and a loyal, dependable client base. A week later, she goes to impress Lucas. She pulled off exactly what she promised, turning 100 gold coins into a fortune so massive it barely fits on the table. Lucas then gives Elizabeth permission to move freely through the empire, starting with the capital. He'd heard the kingdom's got a bounty out on her, so he no longer buys the idea that her escape was some setup orchestrated by the kingdom itself. Afterward, Elizabeth talks it over with Mireille. Now that Lucas has given the green light to travel, it's time to make the absolute most of it. Mireille is going to drop off their usual donation at the church. They can't afford to lose the friendship they've built there, since she's a serious ally. Someone knocks on the door and steps in. Excuse me. It's Lunoa, bringing intel on the imperial capital. She's working as Elizabeth's apprentice now, her way of saying thanks for having her life saved. She's fully recovered, health-wise, and she's even got a handy fix spell for anyone in the merchant business. Item appraisal. Elizabeth decides to keep her close as an apprentice and figures she might as well teach her magic too while she's at it. Anyway, to expand the business out to the capital, she's going to need to round up the company's old members. That's when the Grimoire of Sloth appears in her hand, one of the 7 grimoires in existence. It records contracts, letting her strike deals with spirits and beings from other worlds. In exchange for an offering, of course, they lend her their power. Elizabeth kicks off the ritual. "Oh, great spirit, answer me. Who is the one who crosses the endless skies on wings? Messenger of the heavens and of travel? I offer silver coins as the contract demands." The coin in her hand just vanishes and messenger birds appear out of nowhere. Once everything's set, it's time to head out for the imperial capital. Over the course of 6 months, the trader group snatches up a ton of merchant companies, growing at an insane rate. Finally, it's time to move on the capital. While Elizabeth's away, Grants is the one stepping up to take her place. He's more than capable of handling it. A few days later, Elizabeth, Mireille, and Lunoa set off toward the imperial capital. The nobility social season is just about to kick off. Lunoa still can't get in on high society events, but just being in the capital, the heart of the country, is a huge learning opportunity for her. All of a sudden, the carriage starts shaking like crazy. They've hit a road in absolutely terrible shape. Elizabeth clocks the warning sign instantly and tells Mireille to stay sharp. She's already bracing for what's coming. Lunoa still has no clue what to watch out for, but she's about to find out fast. Feudal soldiers almost never patrol roads this busted up, which is exactly why bandits love setting up shop around here. Elizabeth tells Mireille to look after Lunoa, since she'll handle these lowlifes herself. The bandits actually think it's a joke when they see Elizabeth gearing up to take them all on solo. She drops the first one with magic, but honestly, magic isn't even necessary. She slices through the rest with nothing but her sword. The bald bandit tries to surrender at the last second. He says he was just a farmer, and that after taxes wrecked him, this was the only way he found to survive. Elizabeth gets it, and lucky for him, but she's not in the mood for excuses and sends the last one straight to hell. Bottom line, he was a bandit, and as a merchant, Elizabeth doesn't forgive bandits, period. Lunoa's a little rattled by the scene. Elizabeth explains that bandits are just like goblins or orcs. They steal money merchants busted their backs to earn, and sometimes they take innocent lives too. If you feel bad and let them go, they'll just go hunt down another victim. The rule's simple. Spot a bandit, take them out, no exceptions. Lunoa locks that away in her memory for good. After more time on the road, they run into a traveler asking for a ride. Elizabeth decides to stop the carriage for her. Can't exactly leave a member of the clergy stranded. Her name's Tita, and she's thanking God they didn't make her walk all the way to the capital. Just thinking about it makes her legs give out. Tita's a traveling priestess. Lunoa has no idea what that means, so Elizabeth explains, it's someone who travels around different regions to train, visiting the countryside and offering free healing magic to anyone who needs it. They travel a bit more down the road, and Tita's already passed out from exhaustion. Lunoa takes the chance to ask Elizabeth how she knew there'd be bandits back there. Simple. The road was in bad shape. Road maintenance is essential for anyone running a territory. Lord Lucas, for instance, invests heavily in it. He's a great feudal lord. The governor of this other region, though, is a total idiot, useless and irresponsible. The better the road, the more goods move through, and the more the region's economy grows. Well-kept places naturally draw in merchants and adventurers. That pushes tax revenue up, and the territory gets rich. That's why feudal lords put so much work into road maintenance, except in this particular region, because the governor's a total airhead. Elizabeth asks Lunoa what happens when roads are in bad shape, just to test whether she's actually been paying attention. Lunoa answers that goods transport gets messed up, and rural villages and remote areas stop getting enough supplies. She's right, but there's still a piece missing. Tita wakes up right at that moment and tells Lunoa to think about it the other way around. If the roads are bad, the cost of transporting food and medicine goes up. The price of essential goods skyrockets. With higher costs, people buy less, and the economy tanks. Rural areas get hit hard by this, and farmers with no other option end up turning into bandits themselves. The forces hired to fight those bandits also end up driving transport costs up even further, creating a vicious cycle where prices never stop climbing. A little further down the road, more bandits show up. Elizabeth tells Mireille to watch over Tita and Lunoa, but Tita wants to fight too. Elizabeth's a little wary, but lets her. The two of them hop out and split it. Each one takes half. Elizabeth isn't thrilled about having Tita nearby. She wouldn't have the nerve to kill someone in front of a member of the clergy. She moves in and knocks the first bandit out cold with one punch. And to her shock, on the other side, Tita's wrecking the bandits without giving a single one a chance to survive. She turns every last one into pulp, sentencing them straight to divine punishment. Tita wraps up her side fast and notices Elizabeth didn't kill a single one. Must be out of respect for someone from the clergy, she figures. But Tita says there's no need for that. Bandits only bring suffering to others. So she goes ahead and finishes off the rest that would have been left for Elizabeth. Except one of the bandits wakes back up and launches into a little sermon. He says the Church of Ibris gives people a chance to start over and begs for mercy. Tita makes a whole production out of it, going on about how the gods are merciful and how men are creatures who sin. Whoever truly repents and has a change of heart will earn the gods' mercy. She rambles on with a bunch of pretty words, and in the end, concludes that a bandit isn't a person, and smashes the poor guy's face in again. Elizabeth watches the whole thing, thinking she might need to rethink her opinion of the clergy. She notices Tita doing something and mentions it's worth some decent cash. Gold teeth. You can pull in solid money off those. Before anything else, Elizabeth helps Tita clean up all the blood. Lunoa might get spooked seeing that. Meanwhile, word reaches the moron prince and the viper he's so obsessed with. The prince handed out meals in the poor districts, except in a totally disorganized way, using money straight from the national treasury. Frida gets pissed when a man comes to tell him to rethink the whole situation. According to the prince, the people should just be grateful they got fed. End of story. The man warns that if this keeps up, the national treasury is going to dry up fast. Frida thinks that's ridiculous, saying Elizabeth used to hand out aid to the poor every week with zero problems. The man explains, Elizabeth's aid always came straight out of her own pocket. She never touched a single cent of the national treasury. On top of that, she used to pitch amazing proposals to the king and got jobs for poor people, giving them an actual stable life. Helping people isn't just tossing out food without a second thought. But that's just too much information for Frida's brain to handle, and he gets irritated and orders the food distribution shut down completely. Right now. He doesn't even want to hear another word out of the guy. The man ends up feeling pretty down about it, knowing everything would be different if Elizabeth were still around. He can't help but wonder where she is right now. And right now, she's at a bar, watching Tita get completely trashed. The priestess won't stop demanding more beer. What a funny priestess, huh? According to Tita, alcohol is the water of life, sent straight from the gods themselves. Elizabeth is not finding any of this funny, and you can tell just from the look on her face. The priestess says she'll split the money she made off the bandit's teeth evenly, but Elizabeth tells her to keep it all and just consider it an offering. Drunk as she is, Tita bursts into tears and jumps on Elizabeth, babbling a bunch of nonsense. Elizabeth just wants her to back off. The poor woman's even got snot running down her nose. Mireille and Lunoa are happy watching Elizabeth have this much fun. Mireille mentions that before there wasn't really anyone Elizabeth could truly trust. Her expression was always so tense. But lately, Mireille's been so happy seeing Elizabeth smile with this much joy. Meanwhile, Prince Frida trash talks that man to the viper beside him. He says just looking at her face makes everything feel calm again. Sylvia leans in even closer, offering a lot more than just a look. The two of them are being watched from a distance by a gorgeous woman, staring at them with total contempt while thinking to herself, how did you manage to get taken down by an idiot like that? What a disgrace, Elizabeth. Elizabeth and the girls press on toward the imperial capital, teaching Lunoa the ropes of horseback riding along the way. Little by little, the massive skyline of the capital starts creeping over the horizon. The imperial capital. At last. They roll in with everything already mapped out. Every step of the trip planned down to the last detail. But now that Tita's actually where she wanted to be, she doesn't see much reason to keep tagging along with Elizabeth, so she says her goodbyes right there, no fuss about it. It was one heck of a trip riding with her, genuinely fun the whole way through. Mireille says her goodbyes too, but not before trying to drill one thing into Tita's head. Don't go out drinking like a maniac. Tita swears up and down, hands clasped together, that she'll behave. And that's it. A real goodbye. That night, Elizabeth, Mireille, and Lunoa arrive at the hotel they'd already booked. Lunoa's jaw hits the floor at how ridiculously fancy the place is. Rooms that huge. She even says they didn't need anything this extravagant, that somewhere way more modest would have done just fine. Elizabeth shuts that down with a quick lesson. That's not how this works. You never know who's watching, who's listening, who's keeping tabs on your life. Stay somewhere cheap and people will write you off as small time, no questions asked. That's a lesson Lunoa needs to lock in. Out of nowhere, they get a visitor. Someone who's known Elizabeth for ages. It's Arno, the guy who used to run one of her company's branches in the capital. And get this, he's already picked out a mansion for Elizabeth and the others to live in, plus a building to serve as company headquarters. Everything's set for them to check it out the very next day. Elizabeth is genuinely caught off guard. She never even mentioned they were coming, and Arno, ever the efficiency freak, already had it all handled. Just like planned, the next day they go check out the properties. And the place is perfect. Killer location, prime real estate in the whole city. Only problem, it costs a fortune. Not that it matters to Elizabeth. This is her shot at snagging an amazing property, and she signs the deal on the spot without a second thought. A few staff members even whisper among themselves, stunned. Closing a deal that fast for that much money? And that's just the headquarters. Elizabeth had already decided to buy the mansion the moment she laid eyes on it. Girl doesn't do hesitation, period. Elizabeth heads back to the hotel. Now Arnaud's in charge of renovating headquarters, promising to get the mansion move-in ready as fast as possible. The girls get the afternoon off, and Mireille uses the downtime to scout for more hires. She wants to grow the team, since she's convinced Elizabeth genuinely needs a dedicated personal assistant. If the business keeps expanding at this rate, Mireille won't be able to stick by her side 24/7 anymore. There's way too much company stuff about to land on her plate, and that's going to eat up serious time. Elizabeth considers posting the job openings through the Merchants Guild. Mireille shoots that down instantly. She's not comfortable hiring some random servant to work for Elizabeth. Instead, she pitches another option: slaves. Elizabeth thinks it over before answering. Slaves sign contracts for money and generally fall into two categories: criminals and debtors, both bound by contract magic that makes betraying their owner impossible. Elizabeth likes the idea, and off they go, right then and there, to a slave dealer. They arrive to take a look, and the mood is heavy, tense, a grim, ugly scene. The slaves are injured, drained of any strength. Elizabeth walks out disappointed. Nothing there catches her interest. Most of them are abandoned kids or merchants who went bankrupt. Every once in a while, though, there's someone genuinely skilled who ends up sold off for one reason or another. Lunoa is shaken to her core. That place hit her hard. Elizabeth checks if she's okay, but she's not about to force Lunoa to get used to it. That's just a harsh reality, plain and simple. They head to a different shop, nothing like the last one. None of that horror show from before. A slave sweeping the entrance notices them walking in and welcomes them on behalf of the Cedric Company. Mireille explains they'd like to see the available slaves, and he leads the way. Elizabeth recognizes the company name. It belongs to someone known as the Educator. The Merchants Guild Council of the Empire is a powerhouse organization. It controls trade across the entire region and even swings weight in national politics. If you're trying to do business in the Empire, there's no ignoring these people. It's made up of 7 major merchants, and one of them supplies talent all the way up to the Imperial Court. A slave trader known as the Educator, owner of this very company. They're shown into a room and greeted by the head of the place, Cedric Lewins. No introductions needed. Lewins already knows exactly who Ellie Lees, president of the trader group, is. Elizabeth asks how he knows her name, and he answers, cool as ever, that the trader group's been growing at an impressive clip. Word travels fast to his ears. Elizabeth gets suspicious immediately. Rich merchants around here wouldn't normally care about a company operating out of some unremarkable territory. Odds are, Lewins knows exactly who Elizabeth really is. She plays dumb, but from here on out, she'll need to watch her back around this guy. They talk business for a while until they land on exactly what Elizabeth's looking for: someone to handle her personal needs. Race doesn't matter, just needs to be a woman capable of keeping up with her constant moving between territories. Lewins already has someone in mind, someone who checks every box. While they go fetch the slave, Elizabeth and the girls get a tour of headquarters courtesy of Lewins. They pass by a room where slaves are learning math. The teacher, also a slave, was picked specifically for his impressive command of the subject. And that's not all the company teaches. Some slaves are seen training too. They get a full education here. Academics, martial arts, cooking, sewing, you name it. It's a totally different approach from other companies. The slaves here all look like they're in great shape. Lewins mentions that other companies try to slash slave prices as low as possible just to boost profit. In his opinion, though, that's not a smart move at all. A slave's value doesn't come from obedience alone. It comes from health and education, which develop their actual capabilities, and that's what really drives worth. As a result, his slaves cost way more than anywhere else. And Elizabeth? The higher price just makes her want to buy from Lewins even more. Finally, they meet the slave Elizabeth's interested in. She introduces herself all awkward, stammering like crazy, but they manage to catch her name: Misha. Elizabeth and the others need a second to process the scene. This is Misha's first interview with clients, so she's a nervous wreck. Not much real-world experience yet, but she crushes it in training. Her physical abilities are top-notch. Being a cat girl and all, she can hold her own in a fight and handle long trips without breaking a sweat. Elizabeth decides to take her. Lewin seals the magic contract. Elizabeth presses her index finger to the seal mark on Misha's neck, and Lewins transfers ownership of the little cat girl over to Elizabeth. Misha is overjoyed, thrilled to start something new and grateful for everything Lewins has done for her up to this point. 2 days later, Misha's already gotten used to life at the mansion. Still, she stays super formal, jumping at the smallest thing. Elizabeth finds it hilarious. Meanwhile, she checks in on the first product she's launching in the capital: lipstick. Mireille comes over with an invitation from a certain Madame Melanie, a social gathering. And the timing on that invite couldn't be better for Elizabeth. It's a golden opportunity to expand her network. That night, Elizabeth shows up to the party. She greets Madame Melanie, who kindly introduces her to every woman in the room. Melanie announces that this is Ellie, president of the Trader Group, headquartered in Viscount Lebrick's territory. And she's the one behind the cosmetics Melanie herself uses. The women perk up instantly. Now they get why Melanie's suddenly looking so much better out of nowhere. Elizabeth gets swarmed by future customers, all wanting the products she makes. She thanks them for the compliments and lays out a few plans. Because of production limits, Elizabeth wants to work through partnerships, and since these women were introduced by Madame Melanie, they'll get priority membership. That's what she says out loud, but the real goal isn't production at all. It's status. She knows anyone who joins the club ends up owing Melanie one, and that's exactly the payoff Melanie gets for spreading the Trader Group's name around. Melanie's someone worth keeping close. Her connections run deep. Elizabeth seizes the moment and unveils the company's newest product, not even released yet, telling everyone there they'll all get a sample too. The plan is officially in motion. Elizabeth leaves the party with Mireille and decides to walk back, soaking in the nice night breeze. Suddenly they hear raised voices, aggressive, coming from an alley, and they freeze when they recognize Tita's voice. 3 men have her cornered, demanding money. Naturally, there's zero chance Tita's handing over a single coin willingly, so things go straight to violence. Tita takes all 3 of them down. One of them, with a little help from Elizabeth, though she barely needed it. She and Mireille walk over and ask why the men jumped her. Tita admits she cheated at cards, but tries to spin it, claiming she was just spreading the word of God at a tavern. Mireille calls her out. Is gambling really how you preach nowadays? Tita fires off excuse after excuse, but nobody's buying it, so she takes off running, yelling that somebody out there needs saving. In the end, the girls can't help but laugh at the whole thing. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Haldoria, Lord Sieg talks with Roselia about the chaos swallowing up the kingdom's internal politics. Roselia points out this is all happening because Elizabeth, who used to hold everything together, isn't around anymore. Sieg vents that the prince can't fix a single thing, only makes matters worse. Roselia asks him straight up if he's planning to put her in the position of the daughter he cast aside, and yeah, that's exactly the plan. Sieg snaps back that Elizabeth's a traitor, and that Roselia better choose her words more carefully. She replies she'll do her best not to become a traitor herself. After that, Roselia goes through the pending matters and gets furious at just how incompetent the idiot prince is, letting the kingdom spiral into this disaster. And thinking more on what Sieg said about Elizabeth being a traitor, she comes to her own conclusion. If that were actually true, Elizabeth would have never stopped where she did. At Lucas's mansion, Elizabeth catches up with him over coffee. Lucas mentions he already brought up President Ellie with His Majesty, and the king said he'll just keep watching for now. Since Elizabeth's moves keep benefiting the Empire, the government has no plans to step in, which puts her at ease. On top of that, there's the gift Lucas gave the princesses and the Empress, Trader Group products. They're obsessed. Elizabeth's already sketched out the perfect design to win them over even more, making the makeup that much more appealing. Lucas still can't quite figure out how exactly. Elizabeth plans to get her revenge on the kingdom through all this. She smiles, picks up a flower, and tells him not to worry. This is just one piece of the puzzle. Elizabeth's going to bring prosperity to the Empire and chaos to the kingdom. As she talks, she freezes the flower in her hand solid and promises Lucas she'll save him a front row seat so he can watch the kingdom's downfall up close. Elizabeth's going to tear it all apart with a heart of ice. Meanwhile, back at Haldoria Castle, King Bulet Haldoria and Duke Sieg Leisten, Elizabeth's own father, are supposedly mourning her disappearance. Except, mourning is a stretch, because Sieg barely seems to care. He flat out says there's not much to be done about it, since Elizabeth's wanted for treason anyway. He goes on to announce that with Elizabeth gone and branded a traitor, the new candidate for crown princess has already been picked, Lady Sylvie Lockett. The king looks a little disappointed, but he knows there's nothing to argue. Sieg adds that luckily all the government work that had ground to a halt is finally moving again, thanks to Lady Roselia, who stepped up and took over everything that used to be Elizabeth's job. The king suggests, hey, why not just make Roselia the princess candidate instead? But Sieg reminds him Roselia's already engaged, and that engagement was personally arranged by the king himself, as a thank you for her having been a princess candidate before. If they break that off now, on top of the whole Elizabeth scandal, it could tank the royal family's credibility even further. So, the king just has to nod along, because deep down, he knows his own son is a walking disaster. Meanwhile, said disaster of a prince is casually wrecking one of the knights in a sword training match. He can't resist lecturing the guy afterward, going on about how weak he is and how he needs to remember what it means to be a knight of Haldoria. The knight apologizes and thanks him for the lesson, but the second the prince walks off, he turns to his buddies and goes, "Bro, losing on purpose is exhausting." The bald knight chimes in that if they ever beat the prince by accident, They're getting shipped off to some border outpost for sure. They all agree the prince probably did inherit some talent from his dad, but since he never actually trains, he's never going to get any stronger for real. One of them even mutters that if the prince were even half the person Elizabeth was, he might actually improve. Too bad for them, the prince overhears every word, and it sets him off instantly. Just hearing Elizabeth's name is enough to make his blood boil. He tells himself she's a traitor, plain and simple, and being compared to her is flat out insulting. Right then, he spots Sylvie storming out of a room, and she immediately throws herself into his arms, sobbing that some men were trying to force her into something. Simp mode activated, the prince demands answers on the spot. The men explain that since Sylvie's going to be queen someday, she needs proper education and training. Sylvie, acting like a spoiled toddler, refuses on the spot. She just doesn't want to. And the prince, whipped as ever, tells her she doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to, because just having her by his side is more than enough for him. A little later, the two disaster lovebirds get a visit from a jewel merchant named Chris. She says that besides rare gems from the East, she's also brought some rare fabric handkerchiefs and a few other goodies. The prince vents to Chris about how everyone in the castle keeps looking down on him, constantly comparing him to Elizabeth. But he insists Elizabeth was a horrible person who mistreated Sylvie non-stop, and that's exactly why he had her exiled. Chris, playing dumb like a pro, agrees right away, says what Elizabeth did and what people are saying now is absolutely ridiculous, especially toward the crown prince. Sylvie asks what Chris thinks about all this. Chris suggests the prince prove his worth as heir all over again. When he asks how, Chris says, through military achievements. Her logic, people want strong rulers who can actually protect them. Rack up some real battle merits and nobody will dare look down on him again. The prince goes quiet, thinking it over, realizing he'd basically need a war to pull that off. He remembers the kingdom signed a peace treaty with the empire, and Chris admits invading the empire directly wouldn't be realistic. But a vassal state? That's a whole different story. The prince and Sylvie sit there while he racks his brain trying to figure out how to score this military glory with no war in sight. That's when Rosalia walks in, the worst possible timing for him. She immediately lays into him. Thanks to a certain someone's incompetence, everyone in the kingdom's working around the clock without rest, and that same someone still has time to call in a street vendor just to go shopping. She says if she were him, she'd be mortified. The prince demands respect. Rosalia shoots back that he does say funny things sometimes. Respect, she explains, is something earned by people who actually deserve it. Does he really think he's earned hers? He tries pulling the I'm the crown prince card, insisting that alone should be reason enough. That only makes Rosalia more disappointed in him. She points out the only thing he's got to be proud of is the fact that he was born. Furious now, he snaps back that she's nothing more than some duke's daughter. Rosalia just tears into him harder. Someone who can't even run basic government affairs without help from a mere duke's daughter really thinks he's in a position to say that? The prince goes silent, because he knows she's telling the truth, and it stings. She keeps going, saying her family isn't like a certain other ducal house out there, the kind that wags its tail and rolls over belly up in front of the royal family. Obviously talking about Elizabeth's family. All the prince can do is swallow hard, because he knows Rosalia's family is one of the most powerful in the kingdom, with the strongest military force and a knight order that outclasses even the royal family's own. Making enemies of them would be a nightmare. Then a servant sets a stack of documents on the table, and Rosalia says she's brought him some work even he should be able to handle, as long as he can still sign his own name. The prince tries to insult her back, but Rosalia cuts him off, telling him from now on he's to address her as special assistant to the crown prince of House Fadgal. Confused, he asks, "Special assistant, what does that even mean?" Rosalia explains it's a title given directly by the king to help manage an incompetent heir. She glances over at Sylvie, who's already shaking in fear, and wonders to herself, did she overestimate Elizabeth? If this is who replaced her? But looking Sylvie over again, she figures the girl's probably too insignificant to have even registered on Elizabeth's radar in the first place. Before walking out, Rosalia tosses out one last line, that it's laughable to think Elizabeth ever competed with her over a guy like this. Furious, the prince glances down at one of the documents and realizes it's a support contract for the vassal states. He scoffs, saying there's no reason to be propping up a bunch of parasites. But then he remembers what Chris told him, and a scheme starts forming in his head. Tweak a few clauses in these contracts and maybe he can spark the war he needs. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is looking over a map, scouting the new production site for her goods. The spot she's picked is out in the countryside, in Lebrick territory, a village called Serona. Since a major road runs right through it, the location looks perfect. She gives the go-ahead and asks Misha what's on the schedule after this. Misha says she's got an afternoon meeting with the Bren Company and a dinner with Viscount Naba in the evening. Then Misha pauses. Wait, isn't Bren Company a rival of Elizabeth's trader group? Elizabeth confirms it, adding that Bren's sales have probably tanked since they started competing. Misha wonders if this meeting is basically a formal complaint. Elizabeth figures they're coming to wave the white flag. If they're willing to surrender, she'll fold them right into her own company. If not, well, they'll get crushed completely. No hard feelings. Misha shudders just hearing that. As for Viscount Naba, apparently he wants a traitor group branch set up in his territory. Elizabeth says they'll have to turn him down. Lunoa's surprised and asks why. Muriel explains they need to lock down their position in the imperial capital first. Elizabeth adds that she does plan to open branches elsewhere eventually, which is exactly why she wants to stay on good terms with Naba. As for the dinner, she says she's only bringing Lunoa. The girl's caught off guard and asks why. Elizabeth tells her it'll be good practice for dealing with nobles. Lunoa gets nervous just thinking about it. Right then, Arnaud rushes in with urgent news. The vassal kingdom of Sarjas has declared war on the Empire. This catches Elizabeth completely off guard. He reports that Sarjas has already launched an invasion into Viscount Lebric's territory. Elizabeth can't wrap her head around why such a poor country would declare war on the Empire. It makes zero sense. And she immediately realizes this is terrible timing for her business. The location couldn't be worse either. Sarjas sits in the Empire's southeast, and the only invasion route runs through Broxon Valley, which leads straight to the exact village where she's planning to build her production center. Just then, a letter arrives from Elizabeth's spies stationed in Lebric territory. According to it, Sarjas is justifying the war as reclaiming territory the Empire took from them long ago. Arnaud explains that 20 years back, Sarjas lost part of its land to the Empire, but only because the Empire had stepped in to protect a village Sarjas couldn't defend from monsters, and the region ended up annexed as a result. Lunoa thinks that's absurd. They get rescued, and now they want the land back? Muriel reports that Lord Lucas has already deployed with 1,800 soldiers toward the fort. She asks what Elizabeth wants to do. For now, Elizabeth decides to just watch and wait, hoping Lucas can push back the enemy and end things right there. But something about this whole situation keeps nagging at her. Except the knights at Lebric can't hold the fort. Arnaud reports that Fort Brocken has fallen, and that Sarjas's army apparently has some unusually well-trained units, probably a mercenary company, but not one anyone recognizes. Elizabeth worries Sarjas might use the fort as a staging ground to push even deeper, and that would be a massive roadblock for her plans. So she makes her call. She's joining the fight herself. She decides to hire adventurers and mercenaries and lead them personally. Muriel asks if she's serious. Elizabeth's afraid Lucas won't be able to contain the invasion, and if that happens, the whole border region descends into chaos, taking her business down with it. She sends Lunoa and Misha to the Adventurers Guild with 2 letters, a contract and a letter of recommendation. Muriel warns that if Elizabeth steps into battle, the kingdom's going to find out where she is. Elizabeth already knows that, but she still thinks something's off about this whole war, especially since Sarjas is known as a peaceful kingdom. The girls arrive at the guild, and the guild leader accepts Elizabeth's request, though he can't help wondering why a merchant would risk her life jumping into a war. Lunoa and Misha look worried, but the guild leader doesn't push for a reason. If Elizabeth's here to drive out the enemy, that's already great news as far as he's concerned. He sends his assistant to round up their best adventurers. The girls head over to the home of the Sharpblade, one of the capital's most renowned adventuring parties. Inside, they meet Elsa, the Sharpblade's leader. She reads over the request and realizes it's about the conflict at Fort Brocken. Hearing this, Lisa notes that her hometown is close to the conflict zone. Elsa accepts the job, and Misha and Lunoa breathe a huge sigh of relief. A few days later, Elizabeth meets with several adventuring parties and thanks them for taking the job. She introduces herself as Ellie Lise, president of the Traitor Group, and asks if anyone has questions before they head out. Elsa speaks up about the rations. Isn't 2 days' worth of supplies cutting it a little close? To put Elsa's worries to rest, Elizabeth pulls out her sacred artifact and reveals a dimensional storage space holding enough supplies to keep 100 people alive for months. Everyone relaxes a bit, though Elizabeth asks them to keep the sacred artifact a secret. The group sets off for war, and one of the adventurers, Marty, asks if their employer's actually going to be okay out there. Because unlike her clearly competent escorts, Elizabeth just looks like some pampered young lady from a good family. Elsa quickly corrects her. As a scout, Marty really needs to sharpen her eye for this stuff. Elsa says Elizabeth is incredibly skilled. Another adventurer chimes in that he can't spot a single opening in her movements. Lisa guesses Elizabeth's probably an exceptional mage, court mage level even. Marty nearly dies of fright, thanking her lucky stars Elizabeth's not her enemy. Later, once they're inside Lebric territory, Elizabeth and Muriel check over the camp's defenses. Not satisfied, Elizabeth breaks out the grimoire again and raises a small wall around the whole camp. Elsa remarks what a waste it is for someone this powerful to just be a merchant. Elizabeth brushes it off, saying there are plenty of powerful merchant mages out there, but Elsa pushes back. Controlling a sacred artifact is a completely different level. Half joking, half threatening, Elizabeth asks if Elsa wants to know more about her artifact. To her surprise, Elsa immediately says no. The other adventurer explains there's an old saying among adventurers: curiosity is another name for death. Know too much, and you get dragged in. If you want to live long as an adventurer, you don't go poking around. Elizabeth thinks that's some pretty solid wisdom. Right then, Marty comes sprinting back, practically vibrating with urgency. The village has been taken over by an armed group. From a hilltop, she'd seen armed men everywhere, almost no villagers in sight, and the few she did spot were being dragged away, the roads soaked in blood. The adventurers immediately point out that targeting civilians is a clear violation of the international laws of war. Elizabeth wonders if this could be some group acting on its own, outside official orders. Elsa agrees that's the most likely explanation. Marty estimates around 40 men. And just like that, Elizabeth makes her decision. They're going in to rescue the survivors. Elizabeth's already made up her mind about what happens next: save the villagers, and grab the invaders alive for questioning, squeezing every last drop of intel out of them about the enemy army. The adventurers, of course, were itching to just steamroll the whole camp right then and there, but nope, not this time. Elizabeth's heading to the village with Elsa's group instead. Leaving the base camp unguarded isn't exactly smart either, since it's still not fully set up, so the guys stay behind to watch it. Elizabeth locks in the plan with Elsa, and they agree. They move the second it's pitch dark, because the night is their edge. Night falls. Showtime. Elizabeth yanks a soldier into the bushes and doesn't waste a second laying down the ground rules. One wrong move, one sound out of place, and he's dead where he stands. Mireille tells him to blink nice and slow just to make sure the message landed. And yeah, the guy obeys immediately. First question comes right after. Who are they? Elizabeth asks with a blade pressed to his throat, ready for anything. The soldier, panicking, spills that they're from the kingdom of Haldoria, and that the crown prince promised a fat paycheck to anyone who signed up for the army. When this whole thing kicked off, Frida just happened to be stationed right near the border doing military training. Elizabeth clocks it instantly. Frida's dodged training duty his entire life, so there's zero chance he was there by coincidence. It's obvious now. Frida already knew a war was about to break out. And suddenly everything clicks for Elizabeth. The tiny kingdom of Sarjas has a massive food problem. It's completely dependent on Haldoria for salt. And the guy in charge of that supply chain, or who's supposed to be, is Frida. Elizabeth used to be the one drafting all the paperwork, with Frida just rubber stamping it. Except now he's the one calling the shots on what aid actually goes through. Translation: Frida has total leverage over Sarjas. Either they fall in line or they go without salt. And his whole endgame? Dragging his trashed reputation back up from rock bottom. Elizabeth presses the blade again and asks what they did to the villagers. He says they killed the men who fought back. She asks about the women and kids, and the soldier, clearly uncomfortable, mutters that they locked them all inside and did stuff. Won't say exactly what, but everyone already knows exactly what he means. Elizabeth sighs and tells him she's about to teach him something real quick. What they did was a straight-up war crime under international law. The soldier tries to weasel out of it. Says it was a direct order from the crown prince. Elizabeth's floored. So it really was that garbage excuse of a prince who greenlit the attack. She knows the Empire isn't signing any peace treaty after this, and they're probably about to get paid back in kind, blow for blow. If this spirals, it's an all-out war. Now that the soldier finally gets how deep this goes, Elizabeth has him spill everything he's got, and that's exactly what she needs to track down the rest of the guards. But just as Elizabeth's walking off with her squad, the soldier begs to come with her. Says he wants to fight by her side to atone for his sins. For every villager he hurt, Elizabeth doesn't even look back. She just slices his throat on the spot. That whole "let me pay for my sins" routine, like the world's some fairy tale second chance machine? Total garbage. Losers like him don't get redemption arcs. They go straight to hell. Elizabeth makes that crystal clear. Inside one of the village houses, an old man's begging a soldier to leave his granddaughter alone. But the guy's not even listening. Dude's got zero self-control, acting like an animal in heat. Suddenly, someone knocks at the door. One soldier goes to check who's visiting and gets crushed on the spot, then sliced clean in half, door and all. Elsa's the one who took him down, and she's got the last one pinned to the floor, the only one left breathing. The rest of the girls already handled everyone else. Elizabeth's not about to waste time listening to this piece of trash beg for forgiveness, so she goes straight for the knife-to-hand method, because what she actually wants is information. First question, what's the troop setup at Fort Brocken? Give her something useful and he earns Elizabeth's forgiveness. So he talks, spills where the militia and mercenaries are stationed, and even throws in a warning that these guys are seriously messed up. That's everything he knows. Masty shows up to announce the job's done. Elizabeth drags the soldier outside, and he's panicking because Elizabeth did promise to forgive him, and she keeps her word. She really does forgive him. Except forgiveness isn't really up to just one person. Every single villager that man hurt is standing outside waiting, more than ready to send him off on a nice, dignified one-way trip to hell. Once everyone's gotten their closure, Elizabeth and her crew move in to clean up what's left. 2 days later, one of Lucas's men shows up on behalf of the adventurers. His name's Eagle, sent as Lucas's rep. Update on the army. They're holding position in the south, pushing forward and clearing out enemies as they go toward the objective. Eagle confirms Prince Frida's tangled up in this whole mess, and that they're filing diplomatic protests against Haldoria, but that's probably going nowhere fast. Elizabeth spells it out. Without hard proof that Frida personally ordered the invasion of the Empire, the kingdom's just going to deny everything and walk away clean. Lucas's plan is to push east, liberating the villages currently under Sarius's control, and retake Fort Broken. If that's the move, Elizabeth's in too. They'll march toward the target while freeing villages along the way. Mireille gets the order to round everyone up since they're linking back up with Lucas out east. Meanwhile, back home, Lunoa and Misha are holding down the fort for the group. They're keeping tabs on the news. They know exactly what kind of trouble the traitor crew is running into out there, but they stay steady, keeping everything in order until Elizabeth makes it back safe. Quite a while later, Elizabeth finally reunites with Lucas. He asks about the village she'd been pouring resources into, and even though most of the supplies she sent got stolen, they managed to dodge anything worse. Everyone's just relieved nobody died. You can't undo a life once it's gone. But with fire in her eyes, Elizabeth swears whoever stole those supplies is going to pay an extremely satisfying price for it. Lucas immediately tries to change the subject, not gonna lie. She genuinely scared him for a second there. In the end, she says her goodbyes and walks off, leaving Lucas thoroughly rattled. That brings them to the real topic. Fort Brocken, a fortress with seriously tight security. Getting in is going to take actual strategy. Only people who can wield sacred artifacts stand a chance at breaking in and taking the place. And the sacred artifact users on their side are Elizabeth, Elsa, Lucas, and his ally Dreg. Elizabeth pitches a smarter approach. Lucas and Dreg's troops hit the south side of the fortress, while she and Elsa take the north. On the south side, it's Sargis's regular soldiers. No sacred artifact users among them, except it looks like Frida and Robert are posted there too. And every single time Lucas hears the name Frida, you can watch his disgust climb another notch. Either way, Frida and his guard buddy are guaranteed to bail the second the fighting gets serious. Everybody already knows that's coming. Up north, it's the mercenaries, and there's a good chance some of them can use sacred artifacts too. Since Elizabeth's an absolute powerhouse with magic, she's taking point on that side. Lucas agrees, but warns them, survival first, everything else second. Elizabeth confirms the attack goes down at night again. Darkness is their edge. The moment's finally here. Elsa and Elizabeth are locked in and ready. Elsa's taking the watchtower, while Elizabeth slips in through the back of the military camp. Once they're inside, it's soldier puree time. They're going all out. The only thing they've got to watch for is civilians, since some of them might just be innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. Elizabeth wastes zero time, takes the heads off 2 soldiers the second she's in. After a quick scan, she spots the kidnapped villagers, which means no big flashy spells in that direction. So instead, she drops ice boulders straight onto the soldiers, mixing in more spell work with clean sword strikes. The soldiers scramble to form up and fight back. But that formation's not holding up to anything. Elizabeth unleashes a serious ice spell that drains the life out of everyone caught in it in a single second. The soldiers freeze solid, turned into human popsicles. She does the same thing to a couple more loudmouth soldiers right after. Meanwhile, on her side, Elsa can actually hear how much chaos Elizabeth's causing over there. The first mercenary tries to crush Elsa, loses his head almost immediately. She quickly realizes these mercenaries are going to be way more trouble than she expected. Still, she's holding her ground against all of them. But taking on a whole group at once, with one guy calling out orders to the rest, is a serious headache. Elsa gets surrounded. Instead of backing down, she tosses her sword aside and pulls out her actual sacred artifact, the Phoenix Blade. Elizabeth feels the surge of magic energy instantly and knows exactly where it's coming from. Elsa's sacred artifact, which means that's exactly where the real target is. Elsa's physical abilities spike hard, her regeneration kicks into overdrive. Arrows hitting her barely register as more than a bug bite. Elsa's still boxed in, but Elizabeth swoops in with the Belzebub Grimoire and sets the whole area on fire. The commander gets nervous fast. 2 sacred artifact users in one place is bad news, and orders his men to fall back. He goes after Elizabeth directly, and she blocks the strike with her own arm. That's when it clicks for him. Elizabeth isn't trading blade for blade because she's wielding the winged blade, a magic weapon that cuts through basically anything. The catch being it's brutally hard to control. The commander demands to know who she actually is. A weapon like that should be locked away in some country's treasure vault. Elizabeth just shrugs it off. Just a merchant. One clean hit sends the commander stumbling back, except he's holding a grenade. He slams a flashbang down, blinding everyone for a split second. When the dust clears, the commander's already regrouped with a handful of men, and standing right in the middle of them is Prince Grint of the Kingdom of Sarjas. Elizabeth charges the second she notices they're making a run for it with a magic scroll. But it's too late. They're already gone. At least the main objective got done. The next day, the group regroups to hash out next steps. They manage to retake the fortress and drive Sarjas' army out, but the real problem's just getting started. Lucas is thinking about demanding reparations from Haldoria for the damage. The Crown Prince is a complete disaster of a human being, but the Duke's going to bury every piece of evidence and deny the kingdom had anything to do with any of it. Lucas lays it out plain. Looks like they're going to have to invade Sarjas outright. Then Eagle comes rushing in, totally frantic with news. The Kingdom of Sarjas just raised the white flag. They're surrendering. And among them is a man named Robert Artie, Frida's personal royal knight. And this time, the one stepping up to negotiate with him is Elizabeth herself. Elizabeth's request to speak with Robert, the royal knight, was granted. Robert about lost it when he saw Elizabeth walk in. He knew right then and there. The Knights of Haldoria don't stand a snowball's chance in hell of winning, not with Elizabeth fighting on the other side. She wanted to know what had made Robert throw in the towel. The reason was simple. He couldn't stomach watching Frida rain misery down on innocent people anymore. Lucas tells Robert they're about to storm Sarjas, and that nobody on their side has any interest in tearing the place apart for no reason. Since Robert's on the same page, he decides to team up with Lucas and Elizabeth. Back in the Kingdom of Sarjas, Prince Grint fills Frida in on what went down at the fortress. Frida thought the whole thing was ridiculous. And like on top of that, he trash-talked the military strength of the smaller kingdoms. Total arrogant sore loser who can't handle reality. Still, Frida's staying cocky since he's got his men on standby, ready for anything near the fortress. Then, out of nowhere, a soldier bursts in, totally frantic, with a report. He says they've lost contact with Robert's unit and that they were probably wiped out or surrendered. The second Frida hears that, the coward starts packing his bags to bail on Sarjas. He just dumps Grint and tells him to deny any involvement, his or Haldoria's, in this whole mess. And he throws in a threat for good measure. If Grint dares to open his mouth, Frida will flatten the tiny kingdom of Sarjas. After several days of pushing steadily towards Sarjas, Lucas, Elizabeth, and the army finally reach the capital. The plan is to take Sarjas' capital without a huge battle. And so far they've managed to get there without spilling much blood, all thanks to Robert's intel. And it'll keep going that way. Assuming he's right, of course. Elizabeth walks up to Robert, showing some real empathy. She gets where he's coming from. After all, Robert betrayed Frida, the guy he'd sworn loyalty to with his own sword. But it's obvious the real villain in this whole story is the prince. With a few kind words, Elizabeth wins Robert's trust. Lucas promises he'll protect him, and that depending on how things shake out in Sarjas, Robert might even get to go home to his own kingdom someday. The War Council wraps up there. Time to rest. The moment Lucas steps out, Robert bows before Elizabeth and apologizes for everything he did a year ago, back when he blindly trusted Sylvia and Frida. Elizabeth, smiling, tells him that's water under the bridge, and honestly, the fault was hers too, for never having had a decent relationship with Frida in the first place. Besides, her life these days is going great. She just wants to make one more thing clear to Robert. She's not Elizabeth anymore. Now she's Ellie's Lease, the merchant. The king of Sarjas was fed up, especially after getting ditched by Frida, left holding an insane amount of responsibility all on his own. Sarjas is going to surrender to the Empire. They'll have to own up to starting the war. The king had already worked out a plan for the Empire's villagers who'd been slaughtered. He gives the order, get everything ready to hand the government over to the Empire. The king turns to his own son, Grint, and tells him he was a foolish king. He can't even bring himself to say he was a wise one, not after bringing so much suffering to the kingdom. Last of all, he begs his son's forgiveness for the burden he's leaving behind. Those are his final words. With a knife, the king takes his own life. Grint is king now. Drowning in grief, he gives the order. Raise the white flag over the royal castle. Word quickly reaches Lucas. Grint has come to them as a peace envoy. The moment he arrives, he recognizes Elizabeth on sight. Grint puts it together instantly. That insanely skilled merchant mentioned in all the reports is Elizabeth herself. As for the surrender, Lucas says the Empire accepts it, but Sarjas is still going to have to pay for the losses suffered by the Empire's citizens. Grint hands over a box, and what's inside is his apology, plain and simple. Inside the box is the head of King Zandra of Sarjas. Grint explains, the 9th king of Sarjas took his own life to take responsibility for the war, and now he, Grint, is the 10th king, who is also offering up his own head in case his father's isn't enough. The only thing Grint wants is for his people to be spared any more suffering. Lucas takes the apology under consideration. After all, he never wanted innocent people slaughtered either. Elizabeth asks about Frida, whether he was the one who ordered this whole conflict, and if there's any proof of that, she'd really like to get her hands on it. Grint tells her that every order from Frida, along with the paperwork, is locked away in the castle. He'll hand it all over. Suddenly, a deafening boom. The castle and the city are up in flames. Without hesitation, Lucas offers to help rescue the people and put out the fire. Deep in the forest, the mercenary commander admires the blaze he started himself, all to torch the evidence of what that coward Frida did. And with that, the mercenary gig wraps up. Everyone just disbands and heads back to their own homelands. Lucas, Elizabeth, and Grint pick through what's left after the fire. Studying the wreckage closely, Elizabeth grills Grint about who that group of mercenaries even was, but his answer falls flat. They were only hired because of the conflict, and Grint has zero information on them. Elizabeth orders them arrested immediately. She's positive they're behind the fire. Sure, it might look like a simple accident, but there are clear signs it was set on purpose. On top of that, Elizabeth senses the exact same magical energy she felt back when she fought those mercenaries before. Their goal was to burn away the evidence of Haldoria's involvement. Lucas asks if that means they could be Haldoria agents, but Elizabeth can't say for sure. As far as she knows, the kingdom's never had a unit like that. Anyway, Elizabeth's business there is done. She's heading back to the Empire. Lucas tells her to be careful on the road. Even though deep down he knows Elizabeth isn't going to run into a single problem, she just fires back, asking what exactly he thinks she is, and lets him know she'll be taking the route that passes through places that, until just a few days ago, were straight-up battlefields. Lucas is floored, just seeing that Elizabeth is even capable of making a different facial expression. Meanwhile, Mireille cuts loose the crew she'd hired since their job there is finished. Thomas walks away disappointed, feeling like a total failure for not getting to fight in a single real battle. He never even got the chance to prove himself. Elsa asks where Elizabeth is, and Mireille tells her she's with the Haldorian soldiers who surrendered. Elsa keeps pushing with more questions, but this time Mireille shuts it down. Curiosity killed the cat, and Elsa gets the memo right away. Better to zip it. Elizabeth is with the soldiers and lets them know they'll be taking a different route back to the Empire. Robert asks why. The answer's simple. The usual road to the capital cuts straight through villages that got hit hard by the war. And since they're Haldorian soldiers, it'd be way too risky to march them through those villages safely. But no need to stress, Elizabeth's going with them the whole way. A little bird delivers Arnold a letter from Elizabeth. The girls who'd been waiting for her are thrilled to get the letter. It says they've already left Sarjas, but that Elizabeth's going to be a bit delayed since she still got some loose ends to tie up along the way. Lenoa asks what exactly those loose ends are, and Arnold, wearing that clueless nerd face of his, just goes, "Beats me." No idea either. That night, after a long stretch of marching, Robert notices the soldiers are exhausted and asks Elizabeth for a break. She's completely fine with it. Elizabeth settles in by the campfire and Robert wanders over to talk to her. He apologizes again and promises he's going to make up for Elizabeth's forgiveness somehow, except she never once said she'd forgiven him. Elizabeth stands up and looks him dead in the eye to tell him she hates him, enough that she wants to end his life with her own 2 hands. Robert is stunned and seriously alarmed. Then Elizabeth asks if he knows about her sacred artifact. Robert answers, the Grimoire of Wisdom, a flat-out lie. Elizabeth's true sacred artifact is the 7 grimoires. The Grimoire of Beelzebub appears in her hand, and with it, Elizabeth raises massive stone pillars, trapping the soldiers where they stand. She snaps the Grimoire of Gluttony shut and picks up the Grimoire of Sloth. Elizabeth summons a demon in the form of a slime, one that dissolves its own fangs. It drops onto the soldiers and melts them, putting them through unimaginable agony. Robert, terrified, demands to know why she's doing this. Elizabeth answers, it's simply because they were with Robert. Nothing more than that. And with that, a brutal psychological torture session begins against him. She tells him those innocent soldiers wouldn't be dissolving in agony right now if Robert simply didn't exist. They could be heading home to their families safe and sound instead. Those soldiers are victims of Robert's selfishness, of him insisting on playing the noble knight. And among a whole pile of other things, Elizabeth says, The poor guy can barely stand to hear another word come out of her mouth. Robert tries to fight back and draws the knight's brand, his sword, his sacred artifact. Elizabeth watches the pathetic display and slices the sword clean in half like she's cutting a piece of fruit. She finishes the job with the grimoire of lust. Elizabeth offers up her own hand to awaken the grimoire's curse. This grimoire has the power to rewrite someone's memories and plant an incredibly powerful suggestion. Elizabeth hands Robert a special piece of paper. It'll serve as the smoke signal, the one that rings the bell announcing the start of the retaliation. Robert is finally going to be good for something, at least once, right at the very end of his life. Later, a villager passing by on a cart finds Robert collapsed in the middle of the road, practically unconscious. The man immediately notices his armor, recognizes the crest, and instantly puts it together. This guy has to be a knight from the capital. Without a second thought, he decides to help him. That night, Elizabeth finally makes it home and gets the warmest welcome from the girls. They tell her, clearly relieved, that they'd been worried sick ever since they heard she'd gotten separated from the main group. And just seeing her there, safe and sound, is such a huge weight off their shoulders. Elizabeth apologizes for making them worry and assures them everything's fine now, thanking them both for holding things down so well while she was away. Then she sends the girls off to rest, since it's already really late. The moment she steps into her room, though, Elizabeth gets quite a scare. Mireille is there, waiting for her in the dark. Mireille asks, point blank, if she got hurt. Elizabeth says no, but Mireille knows her better than anyone, and a quick brush off isn't going to cut it. She grabs Elizabeth's hand and immediately senses a curse there. Elizabeth knows there's no point hiding anything from her and ends up confessing. It's the price of overusing her sacred artifact, and it hurts a lot. Mireille just says she'll wrap her arms so no one notices and begs her, eyes full of worry, not to push herself so hard next time. The story rewinds a bit to finally show what actually happened with Sir Robert. The prince, a total idiot, flat out lies to him, claiming Elizabeth's been harassing Sylvie non-stop and even tried to kill her by shoving her down some stairs. Robert, at first, isn't buying it. Everyone in the kingdom knew Elizabeth as the kindest person around. But the prince keeps pushing, insisting Elizabeth is actually a cold, ruthless snake. And he keeps piling on the lies, claims she's using her own trading company to cut cruel deals behind everyone's back, and that she's planning to seize control of the kingdom the second she marries him and becomes queen. Robert asks, suspicious, where the prince is even getting this. The answer? Some loyal subject supposedly told him. And that's the moment Robert just checks his brain at the door. He buys into this useless prince completely, and even builds his own twisted logic on top of it. Precisely because Elizabeth is so ridiculously smart, she'd be capable of shaking the whole kingdom to its foundations if she ever decided to go dark. That's the exact moment the prince decides to make his move. He'll publicly call Elizabeth out at the country's founding day festival, have her arrested, call off their engagement, and officially announce his new engagement to Sylvie. Robert chooses to blindly follow the prince's every word and swears his loyalty without hesitation. On the day of the festival, everything goes down exactly as planned, and Elizabeth gets arrested right there on the spot. Back home, Robert's father is furious and asks if his son has any clue what he just did to the young lady of House Leaston. Robert, still totally convinced he's in the right, says that as the prince's royal knight, he simply did what was right. His father fires back instantly. A real knight would never do something like that, restraining a lady, forcing her into public humiliation, and a lady of the highest nobility at that. That's a capital offense, you idiot. But the son, a complete idiot through and through, insists that as the prince's sword, if that's his highness's wish, all he can do is obey. All his father can manage, caught somewhere between rage and despair, is that he raised a clueless, complete idiot. But in Robert's head, loyalty equals justice, even when that loyalty is blind. Back in the present, Robert wakes up in his own home and is gently greeted by the family's maid. She explains he was rescued by a traveling merchant who found him passed out in the middle of the desert. Robert tries to piece together what happened, but his memory's way too foggy. He can barely reconstruct the facts. His little sister Raoulise comes running into the room and hugs him, crying with relief that he's alive. Right after, his father walks in and, no warning at all, decks him in the face, shouting that on top of mobilizing an army on his own, without the king's authorization, he also invaded imperial territory, lost soldiers, and had the nerve to be the only commander who made it back alive. Robert tries to explain himself, saying he just did what any knight would have done. But his father isn't hearing excuses. He tells him he's a disgrace to the family, that he's lost the right to be a knight, and busts him down to a common foot soldier. Kicked out of the order entirely, forced to start completely over. Before walking out of the room though, his father adds, voice much quieter, as a knight, he's ashamed of him, but as a father, he's beyond grateful he came back alive. His mother comes in right after with that same calm, gentle voice she always has, hugs Robert, and tells him how happy she is he's alive, asking him to rest up. In the end, everyone in that room proves one simple thing. Whatever else is going on, that house is a real family. Sometime later, nearly fully healed, Robert announces that tomorrow he's heading back to the palace to train again, now as a plain-foot soldier. The maid is thrilled and tells him everyone in the house believes in him, no exceptions. Since he still barely remembers anything, Robert keeps telling himself that as a knight he did the right thing. After all, to keep the prince from completely losing it, surrendering to the Empire was the only option. He picks up his sword and swears to himself he'll start from zero and earn his knighthood back. That's when his sister pops into the room, calling him for afternoon tea with the family. He smiles, happy. But that's the exact moment the first memory flashes start creeping back in. He remembers finally that he'd been with other knights, and one question keeps hammering at him. Why is he the only one here? Did all his men die? And out of everyone, why was he the one who made it out? That's the exact moment Elizabeth's curse finally kicks in. Without meaning to, completely unable to stop himself, Robert kills his own sister right in front of his eyes. The maid rushes into the room, walks straight into that horrifying scene brought and gets killed right after. Robert's body starts moving on its own, and he ends up killing every last servant in the house, even his own mother. He begs, in total desperation, for his body to stop, screaming that it's not him doing this, that he doesn't want to do this. But with zero control over himself, his body keeps marching straight toward the city. Meanwhile, far from all that, a group of kids is playing without a care in the world. One little girl is pretending to be the witch Elizabeth, announcing all dramatic that she's going to seize the kingdom for herself. Another kid is playing hero Prince Frida, who's going to stop Elizabeth no matter what. The kids keep at it while the moms watch, and the little girl's mom laughs, saying her daughter always insists she's the only one allowed to play the most infamous villain of them all. It's in this small, almost innocent moment that it becomes crystal clear. The whole kingdom already sees Elizabeth as the worst person to ever set foot there. But right at that exact moment, the worst is actually happening. Robert keeps wiping out everything and everyone in his path. He cries, desperate, repeating over and over that he doesn't want to do this. But his own body, like it's got a mind of its own, keeps massacring civilians without stopping. Later, the king and Elizabeth's father talk privately. Robert's already been captured and locked up, but the damage was already done. He killed more than 85 civilians, 21 soldiers, and 2 knights, on top of leaving a huge trail of wounded, both minor and severe. The king, trying to understand what pushed Robert to this, asks whether the knight's elite training might have somehow backfired on the guy. Elizabeth's father confirms it. Back in their academy days, Robert was always just one step behind a single person, Elizabeth herself. The king then asks if they've figured out the real motive behind the massacre, but the prime minister admits they haven't. Robert just keeps repeating disjointed phrases like, "It wasn't me," or "I would never do something like that." The king looks at Robert's father and tells him sincerely that he's deeply sorry for what his family is going through. He recalls that last time, the chaos the idiot prince caused at the founding festival got swept under the rug, with the blame dumped on Elizabeth for crimes she never committed, which let the prince and the son walk away scot-free. But this time, with so many victims among ordinary people, there's no room for leniency. The king apologizes to Robert's father and says that, unfortunately, all that's left is the death sentence. All the father can manage in response is to thank the king for his kind words, acknowledging that this time, everything was done by his son's own hands, and that the responsibility falls on him too. The king then officially declares, Robert is sentenced to death. Meanwhile, in a cold, dark cell, Robert looks back on the past, on how he was always so easily outclassed by Elizabeth at everything. The other knight's constant jabs just fed an inner rage he never knew how to deal with, one he'd apparently been carrying against her without even realizing it. One day, while grinding away at training like a total sword nerd, he met Sylvie, and it took just one compliment from her for him to fall head over heels instantly. That's when the prince yanks him abruptly out of his memories and mocks him, saying that thanks to the epic screw-up Robert pulled, now even he, the prince, is catching heat over it. After all, Robert was his knight, or at least used to be. Robert tries to explain himself, insists he didn't do any of that on purpose, but the prince doesn't even let him finish the sentence and just walks off, saying Robert let him down badly. Before he leaves though, Robert still asks about Sylvie. The prince answers, ice cold, that he'd never bring Sylvie to a place like this, and tells him, with total detachment, to spend whatever's left of his life clearing his name. With that, he walks off, leaving Robert there alone, treated like trash, completely disposable. Right after, the prince meets up with Sylvie, who runs over and hugs him, kicking off that same cheap little performance as always. He asks if she knows Robert from somewhere. Sylvie denies it instantly, saying she barely knows the guy, like he's just some nobody not worth a second thought. The next day, Robert is marched out to the public square for his execution, right in front of all the victims' families. As he walks through the crowd, he's pelted with rocks from every direction, surrounded by screams of pure hatred, people demanding payback for the relatives he killed. He climbs onto the wooden platform and is forced to kneel, while the whole crowd screams for him to rot in hell. Robert, his eyes completely hollow, accepting that he deserves this, says thank you. Finally, this nightmare's about to end. But the instant he closes his eyes, Elizabeth's cursed words come rushing back into his head. She told him that, in the end, he should at least be good for something. And that's when it all clicks. He finally realizes this was her plan from the very beginning. He tries to scream, to warn everyone that Elizabeth is coming for the entire country. But before he can even finish the sentence, the executioner does his job, and that's it. It's over. At that exact same moment, far, far away, Elizabeth feels the throbbing pain in her arm just vanish. When she unwraps the bandage, she realizes the curse is completely gone, which means Sir Robert is dead. She just remarks, almost casually, that after all that effort, the chaos back in the kingdom must be massive right about now. That night, inside a distant castle, a mysterious figure is holding an entire report on Elizabeth, filed, though, under her new name, Ellie Lees. A man named Lewins, tasked with evaluating her, states that Ellie is more than deserving of recognition for everything she's pulled off lately. He mentions he had a meeting with the Emperor himself, who praised Ellie personally and seems to be deciding what reward to give her. The mysterious figure replies that, in that case, they'll help out with the process too, seeing it as the perfect opportunity to size Ellie up in person, with their own eyes. Elsewhere in the kingdom, Lucas gets a letter laying out, in full detail, everything Robert did. Remembering that right before all this, Robert had been with Elizabeth, he already suspects it. This was probably part of her plan too. The next day, Elizabeth wakes up from an unpleasant dream about her past. Shortly after, she runs into Lucas, who explains that the small kingdom of Sargus has officially been annexed by the Empire and is now just another region. Half the territory is now under direct imperial control, while the other half was handed over to the territory of Lebrick as a reward. He also mentions that Prince Grint is working there as a kind of local governor. Elizabeth thinks that's a smart move. Putting former power players in charge of newly absorbed territories helps keep local pushback in check, at least to some degree. But Lucas clarifies that Grint, in practice, holds zero real power. He's under constant surveillance by the Empire, along with whatever's left of his family. Could be worse, Elizabeth says with a shrug. Then Lucas pulls out another letter and mentions that Robert, the knight who was supposed to just surrender to the Empire, for some reason went on a killing spree inside the kingdom and ended up executed for it. He says he doesn't know the full story, but asks, straight up, was that Elizabeth's doing? With a small, subtle smile, the kind that makes even Lucas shudder on the spot, Elizabeth simply says she turned Robert into a little smoke signal, the first warning shot of an inevitable revenge that's now, finally, about to begin.